So there I was sitting on the edge of my bed in tears, feeling completely and entirely devastated, defeated, and ashamed. I had been spending so much time, so many years fighting to lose weight, fighting for a different result. And I continuously gained more weight. And it was like no matter what I did, it only got worse. And there I was on the edge of my bed, realizing that as a 20, I maybe what, like 24 at the time, maybe a little older, 25, mid to late 20s, right? And young, active, extremely active person, walking every day, going to group workout classes every single day, thinking I'm watching what I'm eating nutritious foods. And yet I was almost 300 pounds. Now, y'all, I'm 5'4". I'm not a tall person. So that is way too much for me to be carrying around. And I came to the realization that if you've been in any 12-step program, the first step is to admit powerlessness and unmanageability. And although I was not in a 12-step program at the time, that really was my first step. I realized that it had gone too far, that I was not in control in the way that I thought I was in control, and that it had become so unmanageable despite my best efforts, despite years and years, even in childhood. I was in Weight Watchers programs and all jazzercise. My mom had me in all sorts of things. And I realized that my home, my soul's home, my temple I needed to get house in order. I needed to get the house in order to call in the dream life. I was broke. I was obese. I was in a relationship that was not aligned. Although it was safe and it was healthy, I knew it was not for me long term. I knew that there was more for me. And if I was going to get there, and if I was going to call in and become a vibrational match for the things that I wanted, that I needed to seek help. I needed to do something different in order to get a different result. And it was really this complete entire breakdown that caused me to have the breakthrough that I needed in order to finally take the steps that I needed to take in order to move forward and in order to make changes. Because what I was doing was trying to control it and, pick up things from Instagram and the internet and maybe take a class here or there. And it just seemed like no matter what I did, because I was not getting personalized feedback and support, because at the time for me, that seemed way too intimate. And I swear all of these issues, whether it's you are a binge eater, whether it's you suffer from any form of addiction, right? For me, it was a food addiction. It comes back to connection and intimacy. And if you can go back to your earliest stuff and sort that stuff out, I promise you it's all connected. Because for me, food was safety. Food was connection. And I'm going to get more into that in just a second. But hi, y'all. I know it's been a while since I have jumped on here and shared anything about my avatar upgrade, my weight loss journey. I don't like to call it that. I really like to focus on it coming from the lens of being an avatar upgrade, because that's really what it's been. I look like a completely different human being than I did a few years ago. And those of you who have been with me from the early days, sometimes you'll pop in and be like, oh my gosh, Jessie, you're looking so good. You're so healthy. You're glowing, yada, yada. You've always, the face card has never declined, but I can tell that you're really shining. And this was that moment for me, sitting on the edge of my bed. So many people have been like, what was like the tipping point? It was that moment. Sitting on the edge of the bed, having just weighed myself and realizing if I don't do something different now, I'm not exaggerating. I had the thought to myself, I'm going to end up as a candidate for my 600-pound life. It was going in that direction. And I could see I had a choice. right? And so for those of you who've been following my journey, I shared early on, I shared that I had weight loss surgery. And there's a lot of stipulations and stigma around what that process looks like. But I said to myself, you know what? My higher power has given me tools, has given us brains for science and surgeons and things of that, so that people like myself can get the support they need. Now, my weight loss surgery was not the end all be all for me. It helped me lose about 60% of the weight that I needed to lose, but it was not the end all be all, because the majority of the work that needed to be done was an inside job, meaning it was spiritual. It was intuitive. It was trauma work. It was healing work that had to be done. And I had to have a spirit of surrender and humility to say, I don't fucking got this. I have tried. I've tried it all. I've tried it my way. And now I need to hand it over to some professionals and to my higher power, because what I've tried has not worked. And I needed to live in reality and not be in denial about the fact that what I was doing and the way that I was going about it was not working. And so for me, this part of my journey really busted open my spiritual journey, because it was about, stop avoiding all of the things, all of the work that I was kind of dancing around of like, okay, childhood trauma in this way and family dynamics in this way. So much of it came back to my temple, right? My soul's home was so critical of a catalyst for me to be able to do the type of work that I talk about with my students and my clients all day long and every day. This is the type of stuff, because so many of us are living outside of our bodies. We're not even home in our bodies because of trauma, because we learned early on our body was not a safe place. This is the work, you guys. This is the work. And so for me, this avatar upgrade has been a major part of my spiritual journey, because I learned that it all starts here, right? If you're not sleeping in the way and feeding yourself in a way and all of these like basic self-care things, it ties back into everything. Our connection with ourself, our connection with our higher power, our connection with other people. And for me, this step in my journey was absolutely something that I could not, I could have, right? I absolutely could have. But it came to the point where I had a decision to make. And I made the decision. I knew what I wanted, right? What I wanted was that big bag of chips. But what I wanted more was the life that I have now, and the body that I have now, and the glow that I have now, and the health and the fitness and the strength that I have now more than anything. And that connection to myself and my body, it was a scary thing, because again, I learned early on my body was not a safe place. So to focus on that and to face that head on was absolutely terrifying. And to be honest, because I had had a cesarean with my first baby, I was not afraid of surgery. It actually was the least scary part of it. The hard thing about any surgery, and you guys know I've had a cesarean, I've had my weight loss surgery, I've had a mommy makeover, and then a revision after that. I am no stranger to surgery. Surgery doesn't terrify me. The hard work is after, right? The hard work begins in recovery and in post-op. And that's when I realized, right, that first week after weight loss surgery, I could not eat anything solid. You're on a strictly liquid diet. And it was so basically you're fasting, right? I'm drinking water, broth, Gatorade. Those are your options as you're recovering, because they've just removed 2/3 of your stomach organ. So anyone who's ever like, oh, you cheated, or, oh, this person cheated because they had weight loss surgery, come back to me after you had 2/3 of any major organ removed, and then let's talk about cheating then. Okay, let's be fucking serious. But it was in that first week that I had the light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, food has been serving a purpose in my life that I didn't realize. Because I wasn't able to eat, and because I wasn't able to use food as a tool and a coping mechanism to numb my feelings, I realized it was like a grief. It literally felt like grieving an old friend, because I couldn't eat. I realized that food was serving a role in my life like a friend. I would turn to it, right? Late night, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm overthinking. Where am I? I'm hanging out in the kitchen, going through the pantry and raiding the fridge. After I've had a hard day of, coaching calls or maybe conflict on the team, where am I turning? Into that bag of chips and a bar of chocolate. I realized what I was hungry for. And what I was hungry for was soothing, was peace, was serenity, was strength, was connection, was all the things that I wasn't actually getting in my human relationships. And my disconnect from myself, and more importantly, my disconnect from my higher power. So when I say that this avatar upgrade was spiritual in ways that I can express in this video, but it has been such an important and powerful journey along my spiritual path, you guys. And I see so much of the spiritual community struggle with this. A lot of healers struggle with their weight. And I was a chunky kid. And not ironically, did my weight gain start when the abuse in my childhood started, right? That same year is the same year my parents both looked at each other on video camera. We have this in our family archives camcorder. My parents looked at each other at one of my sister's birthday parties and said, "Is Jess getting kind of chunky?" Have you noticed that? And that was the year that I was being abused, that the abuse started. So many of us, I actually believe there's a statistic that 80% of obese patients, and it's like morbid obese or hyper obese, I don't remember the exact medical term, but 80% of obese patients have suffered from childhood sexual abuse. So when we consider and we talk about healing and spiritual journey, you guys, all these things are so connected. And I know it's painful and I know it's hard. And there's no one talking about this stuff. So I want to be the person to share and talk about this journey in a way not many of us have been talking about it. Because I know if I can talk about the ways that I set myself free, that maybe it will give the keys to somebody else. My weight was a security blanket. My weight was a way for me to stay safe, or so I thought, because it kept unwanted attention away. And while it didn't really work, it was my brain's subconscious way of saying, this is a way of keeping me safe. This is my fortress. There's a really powerful book. The author's name is Roxane Gay. And I can't remember if the title is Hunger or Hungry. But she writes about this exact thing. Similarly, she was a child, experienced childhood sexual trauma and started gaining weight almost right away and found herself, struggling with all the things throughout her life that were correlated to this event that goes back to her childhood. And it's a hard read, but it is one of the most honest, daring, it's so beautifully written as well. And so if you're resonating with what I'm sharing and her story, I highly recommend you read this because it was so incredibly validating for me. I don't remember where I was going, maybe Cali at the time. I was flying and I was just on this flight sobbing, like silently. I'm not somebody who's like, woo-hoo-hoo, but it was just like tears just streaming down my face of like, I didn't think anyone else knew about this. And although I had surgery at this point and gone to support groups for that, but nobody was talking about it from this lens, from the lens of healing childhood trauma, from the lens of it being a part of our spiritual journey and what that looks like, right? Because it's like, God, where were you? Higher power, where were you? And finding a connection with our higher power after we have a trauma like that in childhood. I knew that if I wanted to call in the things I wanted to call forward into my life, the business, the clients, the work, the money, the relationship, the car, the apartment, all of those things, it wasn't going to happen if my house wasn't in order, if my temple was a hot mess, and my temple was a hot mess. I had a little one at the time. I think my son was maybe, let's see, 4 or 5. So yeah, I could barely keep up with him physically. And although I was active, I just could feel, while I could move and walk and all of the things, I knew that I was headed down a really dark path. And so if you're in this place and you are finding yourself to be struggling and you don't know where to turn, you don't know where to start, I'm holding space one-on-one for people to book calls with me and talk about it. And I'm happy to share resources and help you create a plan and craft something that is going to help you take your next best step. Because I know that I was in a place where I was just simply at a loss. And I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to even create a plan for myself, but I just took it one step at a time. And although there are a lot of influencers out there now that talk about their weight loss surgery and their before and after, there aren't a lot of people who are brave enough to share their why behind how they got to the weight that they are. And, finding that obesity is and can often be, part of our spiritual journey, and what that means and what that looks like, and how to take the next step for you in your life and become somebody that, or you're proud of how you look and you're proud of your meat suit in this human experience. Your soul came here to experience and play full out. And I know this is a really taboo subject in the spiritual space and people don't want to talk about it. And if so, you're, fat phobic and you're fat shaming and all of these things. And we're all beautiful humans in our journey. But I knew for me, being 100+ pounds overweight was not my best life. And to be frank, although I'm speaking to it from the lens of spirituality, what worked for me ultimately was taking a medical approach while also going about it in a spiritual way. And I know that you might be like, whoa, just to say more about that. If you want more, of course, drop it in the comments or whatever. But I had to take because I'm such a spiritual woo person, it was almost like, again, I had to come back into my body and realize, just like diabetes or heart disease, I needed to take a medical approach to this in a way I had not before. I had been winging it. I had been journaling about it. I had been manifesting. I had been all of the things, but I needed to take a more earthly approach in order to be able to move forward. So as you've noticed over these last few months, and I've been sharing with you guys, I'm going to be opening up and talking more about life, about business, about less about the logistics of business, but more behind the scenes, about dating and relationships and love and boundaries and emotional intelligence and glow ups and all of these things, because these are the things that I'm actually talking about in my day-to-day that are sparking joy and, that feel more aligned for me in this season of my life. And as this podcast channel, wherever you're listening to this, begins to blossom and grow, I'm going to need your feedback. And I'm going to need you to let me know what resonates, what doesn't resonate, what you want more of, what you want me to cover. If maybe if I touch on a topic lightly and you're like, Jessa, please dive more into that. Your feedback, your reviews, oh my gosh, they light up my heart so much, and they're so supportive and so helpful. And I have a long grocery list of shit I want to talk about with you all. But having that feedback, you guys know I'm a 6'2" emotional projector, and getting that feedback from you all helps me to, serve and guide in a really aligned and powerful way. And there's a lot coming, but having your direct feedback really allows me to serve you at the highest level. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm moving away and pivoting away from, like I said, focusing solely on business and content and how to do these things, because I want to talk about really deep shit with you guys. And as I'm recording this, my birthday is a week away. It's Cancer season, and my birthday is the 18th. So if you're hearing this anywhere, before on that date and you want to shoot me some birthday love, you certainly can at JessaMichelle _ on Instagram. And I love you all so much as always. Again, if you want support and you want to tap in with me one-on-one and connect and get some guidance and some coaching on this type of stuff, life, body, love, self-care, all of that, I'm here. I love you. and I'll see you soon.